Welcome to the Tech Insider, where we talk to the people who can give you the insights and trends that matter to you in your business. I'm Christine Grail with Leica Geosystems.
I am so happy to welcome to the program today Tyler McMillan. Tyler is the Director of Reality Capture for NOAR Technologies based in Clawson, Michigan. Welcome to the program, Tyler.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So, we're going to spend a lot of time today talking about reality capture since that's your specialty. But I wanted to start off with something that probably has nothing to do with reality capture. I understand that if someone is interested in learning about sea turtles or jaguars in Costa Rica, you would be a great person to ask.
That is actually accurate. Yeah. So fresh out of college, I decided that I'd had enough of the engineering world and went down and lived in Costa Rica for about 8 months in the remote jungle, studying sea turtles and jaguars and predation. Yeah.
Wow, that is so much fun. So, how did you
Yeah.
end up in reality capture coming from that kind of environment? Then, obviously, you have an engineering degree, a civil engineering degree. So, you must have had some
Y-
interest in the engineering world and not just the world of biology. But tell us how you
y-
got started in reality capture.
Yeah. So, a civil engineering degree from Western Michigan University. Once I graduated with that, I kind of knew that hard engineering and just math and numbers wasn't really what I wanted to do, but I was always interested in the construction technology kind of side of things. Um, did a few years as a civil engineer for a company up in northern Michigan, and quickly found out that that wasn't really what my passion was in. So moved back downstate and started working with NOAR Technologies and Chad and Michelle Studer, just as an AutoCAD instructor and trainer and troubleshooter, and then switched kind of gears into the Leica Geosystems and aerial UAV space. So Chad Studer started in the industry back in '98, kind of was at the birth of laser scanning. And as the business has developed, it's just Leica has continued to grow as part of our business portfolio. And I needed to specialize a bit. And I don't know if it's growing up with a joystick or a controller in my hand or what, but the 3D kind of reality capture and modeling space came pretty naturally to me. So being able to transition into 3D measurements and laser scanning was rather seamless.
So, working with NOR Technologies, you obviously represent the laser scanning technology. You're working, coming alongside companies that are trying to implement laser scanning. You're helping to guide them in what technology to choose, but you also get involved in projects. Have you worked on anything that's really interesting that really stands out to you?
Yeah, quite a few. So, on the kind of dealer side, a lot of the stuff I get to do is either proof of concepts, or if a company needs on site training, I'll go on site with them and then instruct them in the capture method. Um, One of my favorite jobs was out in California. It was kind of an old airplane graveyard. So I got to climb around a 747 up in the wheel well and everything. And that was all for propulsion testing. So they were scanning the plane and then modeling it. So just being able to get that hands on with a large aircraft, that was a cool one. Also out in California, I've worked with a shipping company, so scanning the interior of a shipping barge for deflection. Uh, that that was a fun one as well. Had never been on a shipping vessel before, um, and then just all of the automotive plants. So being based in Michigan, we work closely with a lot of automotive manufacturing or parts, and going into those plants is always interesting, right? Every factory is slightly different, and seeing the differences between the different makes and models is something I really enjoy.
So, probably your engineering background helps give you some confidence when you're going in and actually using the scanner and helping these companies capture the data, because a lot of it is helping them understand what's possible with the technology, not just, okay, here, take this tool, push a button and go, but you're actually showing them what the data looks like and how they can use the data and apply the data, how they can mine the data later on to
Mhm.
continue to make it add value. So, What how do you go into a situation like that and be willing to explore a little bit at the same time? You have to be confident about what you're doing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So going into those scenarios is always interesting. You always have to think about the challenges and kind of issues that may arise with that particular location or scene. And I've found that a willingness to just try is kind of pivotal, right? With the speed that the scanners can capture a full scan these days, really taking one additional scan as a test measure is a matter of minutes, right? So we always kind of preach over scanning the location, right? If you are focused on a specific location of the building, but with an extra 20 minutes, you could get the rest of it. We always strive or suggest that you go ahead and do that because, as you said, that kind of future proofs the data in a way. If the client wants to go back and do additional scanning or do some sort of modification to that location, whether it's a plant or a construction site, having all of that extra data really comes in handy, right? So,
So it sounds like you're pretty adventurous and you're willing to try some new things. Obviously, the technology continues to evolve, and I feel like every time I see you posting on LinkedIn or any kind of social media, you're one of the first to get your hands on something and give it a test run. Have you encountered any situations where you had a hard lesson to learn and things just didn't go the way you planned?
oh, plenty. Yeah. I think the biggest one that actually impacted, and I had to go back and redo a whole day of work, was not copying off the raw scan data before trying to import and process it. So that was early on days with the RTC 360, and I just dragged the files from the flash drive and tried to import directly. My computer at the time wasn't the greatest, and it crashed mid import. Nothing to do with the software. It was the computer was under spec. Uh, and when I powered it back on, the flash drive was completely white. So the data was fully corrupted. The whole 200 or so scans were gone. And from that day forward, I always copy the data over to the local hard drive. You don't want to work off of flash drives or a network drive or anything like that. Uh, that's probably the biggest lesson I've learned, just from the amount of scans that had to be redone. Um, but the others really come down to trying to minimize time on site. Right, you'll get people that get on scene and want to do the minimum number of scans and then get out of there. And with a lot of these projects or demos, it's not like the project is in your backyard, right? So if you're driving 3 hours to get to the site, take that extra 20 minutes to do additional scan work, right? So I keep going back to that point, but that's one of the hardest lessons I think people learn over time, right? Is to kind of open up the scope of just the scanning project itself. Um, Other hard lessons uh, the the kind of the opposite side of that is true as well. Doing too many additional scans or too many extra deliverables kind of balloons the data to a level that a lot of people can't handle or can't use. Um, so, for instance, we worked with a local engineering firm scanning Ford Field, where the Detroit Lions play, and they couldn't use I think it ended up being a 1.4 terabyte project in total. It was around 3,800 scans in totality. So putting that on survey control and getting everything referenced to the same coordinate system, and then breaking that off into smaller pieces to mitigate that issue of large file size.
That is a lot of data. I can
Yeah,
imagine that level of data must be overwhelming. I mean, you're talking about Ford Field and that's a fun project, obviously, but in any situation, you're working with a client that maybe they're used to 2D deliverables still. And so here you are with terabytes of data and helping them over that hurdle must be a bit of a challenge.
it definitely is. That's where the LGS file, TrueView, and online cloud viewers really come into play. So getting everything loaded into Reality Cloud Studio, being able to share just a quick link, exporting limit boxed areas to reduce down the scope, all those things help. But yeah, that one was a bit of a process.
Well, and it has to help clients feel some level of confidence working with you, knowing that you've been through a lot of these situations. I mean, having to redo an entire day of work is absolutely painful, but at the same time, being able to have that lesson learned so that you can help your clients avoid going through that same situation. You can help them avoid the computer crashes and all of those pain points. That has to be really helpful when it comes to working with clients to be able to bring that expertise and that knowledge to those professionals.
Absolutely. That helps build that relationship and build that trust, and hopefully others can learn from my mistakes so they don't have the same issue, right?
Exactly, exactly. Now, you are also a certified drone pilot. And so, when we talk about reality capture, often here at Leica, we're talking about laser scanning. And you certainly do a lot of laser scanning, but you are also using drones.
Mhm.
Where do you see the role of both drones and laser scanning when we talk about reality capture? What does that look like in your mind?
Yeah, so they kind of are two pieces of equipment to make a full deliverable or a full replication, full 3D model of a space, right? Traditionally, at least with laser scanning, that's all done on the ground, right? Terrestrial. So getting the ground-based perspectives and point clouds is easy, but then how do you add in the roof, right? If it's a old abandoned building or just a dangerous site that you don't have roof access, drones can then come in and kind of complete that picture, right? So using the drones to capture either large aerials or just roof lines, things of that nature, and then merging them in with the terrestrial laser scan data. That's something that we've been doing for years now. We actually used to do that back in Cyclone Core, back in the old days, and now it's getting easier and easier with things like the BLK to fly and being able to integrate that data directly into Register 360 Plus. But I think drones and aerial based LiDAR is really going to just keep getting bigger and bigger. It's gotten faster, cheaper, and easier every year, it seems. And using it to complete those 3D renderings or point clouds to get the top down perspective, I think that is just going to become more and more popular. Right.
Well, and so working with a company like NOAR Technologies can certainly help in guiding which technology is appropriate for which application. How do you merge that data? Do things like sensor fusion? What software do you use? It can get pretty complicated, but at the same time, technology is continuing to evolve to make that process simpler. And having a company like NOR step in can certainly help.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit about NOR Technologies because I know the company represents, I mean, you've got a bunch of logos on the wall behind you. So you represent technologies, you supply technology or technology dealer. You mentioned that you do some training. You also get
Mhm.
out on projects and kind of act as that backup support. Tell me how NOR Technologies gets involved. In what different markets do you get involved in? How do you support your clients?
Yeah. So NOR was started about 14 years ago as really an Autodesk dealer. Was the start of the business was the Autodesk side. From there, Chad and Michelle kind of branched off into the Leica Geosystems and laser scanning side, and it just ballooned from that. And now we service and support all sorts of industries. So whether it's construction and engineering and surveying, with laser scanning and job sites, or I'm looking at a wall of police badges. So we work with tons and tons of law enforcement agencies, whether they're scanning accident reconstruction scenes, or using the drones for things like search and rescue. But NOR Technologies, the company, we strive to kind of build that lasting relationship with the clients. So we don't just want to sell the scanner and then kind of shake the hand and walk away. We want to make sure that they're successful with the technology, whether that includes demonstrations or showing workflows, training to get staff up and running with the scanner and the software efficiently, or just troubleshooting, right? We get calls from people in the field that, hey, we have an error or something's going on with the scanner. What do we do? And that's when we kind of hit the ground running and start troubleshooting, right? So, uh, nor we try to, it's more of a partnership than just a sale, right? So we always say we're not successful unless our clients are successful. So it's after the sale is when the real work begins, right?
So you're there to provide the technology, but then you
Yep.
also bridge the gap and become an extension of whatever team it is you're working with when you are working with a client. I think that can be very valuable. It provides that flexibility so that your client can do whatever it is they need to do. And again, have that confidence in the technology and that partnership to be able to move forward. Now, you have been involved with Leica Geosystems technology for quite a while now, and you
Yeah.
are an advocate for the technology. What do you like best about Leica Geosystems technology?
Well, really, the speed was the big thing. Going back to the early days with the P series, moving to the BLK systems and the RTC, the speed just is really incredible. That's been the biggest kind of shocker to me in the last 5 years or so. The changes in the industry, but the precision and the drive to keep innovating, right? The uh, ability to export E57s from Field 360 while on site on the iPad, pushing those directly to our CS and doing automatic registration. It seems that Leica is always at the forefront of that innovation in the reality capture space. And it's exciting to get to work with all of these sensors and softwares, right? Uh, we've been lucky enough that we get the equipment pretty early on, and that bridging the gap between our clients and Leica um, is kind of something we love doing, right? Anytime a new scanner comes out, like the BLK to Go Pulse, we have one in house. We've done data sets with it, and anybody that wants to see that, they don't typically have the time to demo and learn these new processes, right? So being able to kind of assist with that and provide data and knowledge um, is one of the key points.
Now, you've worked your way from not really knowing anything about reality capture to now being the director of reality capture for NOAR Technologies. And so you've just been that person that's jumped in and figured things out and not been
Mhm.
afraid to explore. What advice would you have for someone who's just getting started with reality capture? Because the technology moves so fast sometimes, they
Right.
can be hard to keep up. So what would you suggest that they do? How do they get started, and what is the biggest piece of advice that you could offer?
I would say just always be willing to try the next new thing, right? It's not an industry that you can sit on your hands and kind of be idle. It's there's new technology coming out. It feels like weekly, and part of the fun is testing that new technology. So don't be afraid to try something new, and if it fails, that's just a lesson learned, right? There's fail forward, as the old saying. But the and then just the drive to try and figure things out is something I think is really important, right? If you run into an issue, well, it's tempting to just throw up your hands and kind of walk away. um, I think having the tenacity to continue working on that and figure out what the issue is and then figure out the workaround is a really important thing to have.
When you mentioned how frequently new technology is coming out, I know something that I see from you a lot. It's not just the hardware that's changing, it's the software that's changing. A lot of the change actually is happening in the software. And I see that you're constantly out there trying to push those boundaries, trying to figure out how much you can get out of the software. You're testing it and you're sharing your knowledge. And I have to believe that's an important piece as well. When you get that knowledge sharing, you're willing to share what you've learned. You have other people weigh in, and that becomes part of the learning process.
Yeah, it's always that give and take. I think hoarding knowledge doesn't help the industry as a whole, and it if somebody is out there doing a process maybe incorrectly or delivering inaccurate data, sooner or later that leaves a bad taste in the mouth for those clients that are looking at that data, right? If they're trying to model off of a point cloud and it's registered incorrectly, they might be turned off from laser scanning for the next year, right? So I think when we find workflows or find kind of issues, getting that out to the general public and just sharing that as much as possible is one of the key things.
Where do you think reality capture is headed?
Oh, uh, as
Just a
far
small
as
question.
yeah, yeah, just a small question. I think the big changes are all towards SLAM and autonomous and mobility. Um, it wasn't too long ago that mobile mapping was prohibitively expensive, and that's come down quite a bit. We now have devices like the BLK to Go or the BLK to Fly that allow that mobile data capture. So I think that it's just going to keep getting more accurate. Typically, when we talk about SLAM, we're not in the same level of accuracy as terrestrial kind of static scanning. But I think that's going to change. I think that is going to get better and better as time goes on, and that is eventually going to replace that pure static scanning.
Why do you think that's so important? Why do you think the developments in SLAM are so important? What does that do for the industry? And really the industries that you serve, because you're in a lot of different industries.
Yeah, it speeds up the data capture. It when you can capture a location as quickly as you can walk it, that makes capturing something like a hospital or a school that has hundreds of rooms and multiple floors uh, less of a ordeal, right? Even with the speed of like an RTC or the BLK, we still have to move the scanner, set it up, wait for a minute, move to the next location. That allows a lot of kind of time wastes or time that people can get kind of stuck, right? Either not noticing that the scan has completed, uh, so letting it sit for a little bit longer, or just while moving, it's hard to sometimes visualize the space in 3D and make sure that you've captured everything from those static positions, right? And Field 360 and the ability to see the scans in the field kind of alleviate a lot of that, but with the SLAM scanners, as they're capturing continuously, just as you walk a building as normal, it's going to get the majority of that detail, right? So when we're just trying to get things like quick floor plans, walls, doors, windows, um, a SLAM scanner can decrease the time in the field pretty dramatically, sometimes 80, 90%.
You obviously see all the potential of the technology because you're working with it every single day. You're seeing what clients are able to achieve with it. What are some of the biggest hurdles that you're seeing right now that's really holding technology back from what it could achieve?
Uh, well, one of the big issues is data size and computing power. Um, when we're talking things like aerial lidar, I just did a comparison between a lidar data set and traditionally captured data. And while it was 30 hours in the field for traditionally capturing the survey data and 20 minutes for the lidar, the processing and the data size then it was 14 gigs of lidar data compared to 2,000 point northern easting just ground shots. So we're talking gigabytes compared to kilobytes. So storage and drive space and speed is one of the big hurdles. The other one being just people still aren't really used to working in 3D, right? Um, we have a lot of users using AutoCAD or Civil 3D, but they're not looking at it in a three-dimensional view at all, right? Everything is still done in a two-dimensional drawing. So I think getting the industry more used to working in 3D is the first step. And I think with the popularity of Revit and tools like Cyclone 3DR, that's becoming the norm, right? People are now expecting that full 3D rendering of a building. Um, but getting users more used to working in 3D, I think, is honestly the biggest hurdle. The scanning itself and the registration just keeps getting easier and easier, but working with that data still is a challenge. So, instilling confidence in the data extraction from the point cloud is really, I think, the key.
Well, it's all about what people are used to. And I have to believe that some of those hurdles are just going to come down as that next generation comes in because they're used to, they demand 3D. They
Yep.
demand some of those high tech. visualizations that laser scanning brings to the table. And so they're not going to be satisfied with 2D anymore. So some of that is just going to happen as a natural course. And the older generation is going to have to figure out how to keep up. I think we're seeing some of that with artificial intelligence right now, too. Like, okay, where is this all going? You've
It,
seen a lot of changes happen, even just since you've been in the industry. What most excites you right now?
uh, it kind of comes back to the software, the rapid change in the software. I mean, when I started, it was Cyclone Core and it was a Windows file tree system, and I'm I'm still of the age that I could understand that, but showing somebody, a fresh high school grad, that software, they think it's from 1992, and it's really not that old at all, right? Um, so that, yeah, that's the changing software, the simplifying workflows is, to me, the most exciting. Um, the second part is then adding in the aerial side. So Leica has terrestrial laser scanning kind of locked down, right? And the BLK to fly is really their first step into the aerial LiDAR field. And I think that is going to be one of the rapidly growing segments for them.
Yeah, it's going to be fun for sure.
Yeah.
So, can we expect to see you going back and doing something with laser scanning in Costa Rica with the sea turtles and jaguars, or is that a completely separate thing?
I hope so. That would be the dream right there. That yeah, I mean, we could use some aerial based options for ground mapping and all sorts of things working in the national parks there.
Yeah, it's just hard to say what could emerge from that, right? Now that you
Yeah.
have all this experience behind you. So, Tyler, is there anything that you're watching or listening to in terms of a podcast or reading that you think would be interesting to our audience or that you think would be valuable to them?
Oh, interesting, sure. So I'm kind of an odd one where I listen to a lot of like heavy metal and death metal, and I also listen to like bluegrass and folk music. So I was at the Tyler Childers concert a few nights ago at where was that? Pine Knob, of course. And so that was some great folk music. There's a band out of Massachusetts called Fires in the Distance. It's like just a metal band that has really kind of taken my interest. As far as interesting things related to laser scanning, that's a bit trickier. Of course, the RCN podcast, Matt Bird's. There's always that is always a good time to listen to. Um, as far as reading goes, though, I haven't done much reading in the last few years.
But you don't have time. You have all these other projects that you're working on. So,
There's always a new software.
understandable.
Yep.
All right, excellent. So if anyone's looking for you outside of work, they should try to find you at a concert. Is there anything else that people might not know about you that would be interesting to them?
Yeah, I so in addition to going to concerts, I've played the violin for the last 25 years now or so. So I'm classically trained and got sick of classical music and then transitioned into bluegrass and Celtic and folk. So
Wow, so cool.
yeah, pretty much anything to do with music and I'm there.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Well, Tyler, thank you so much for your time today. It has been a pleasure speaking with you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Be sure to check out the description for additional resources on this topic. If you enjoyed this content, give us a like. If you'd like to see more of this content, be sure you subscribe. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the Tech Insider.